This is going to be a Valheim food tier list going over some of the food options that you're going to have as you're embarking on your Valheim journey in the first 10, 15, 20 days, depending on how fast you're playing through the game. These will be the food options you come across in the first couple biomes, the meadows and the Black Forest. That way you can hopefully get a feel for which foods you should really be prioritizing to keep massive stacks of and which ones you should be prioritizing to have as your 3 food sources, whether you're building at your base and doing random things around home or embarking out for a big type of boss fight or encounter. And then really quick to familiarize you with the icons down here, they go in alphabetical order, starting with blueberries and then boar jerky, carrot soup, carrots, cooked boar meat, cooked deer meat, deer stew, cooked necktail, honey, minced meat, mushroom, queen's jam, raspberries, and yellow mushroom. And as I'm throwing them up on the board, I'll try to kind of go in the order that you are going to come across them as you start a new playthrough in Valheim. So first up, right out the gate, when you spawn into a new world, the first ones you're going to come across are going to be raspberries and mushrooms. So typically, a pro tip if you're a new player, when you spawn into a new world, you want to get those food sources up as fast as possible because they're going to give you enough stamina and health to be able to deal with the world around you. And usually if you walk around the spawn area, on like the outside of those initial stones that you spawn next to, you can usually find both raspberries and mushrooms within the first 30 seconds of playing and get yourself at least 2 different food sources. And the way that these work is raspberries are going to give you a little bit more stamina and the mushrooms are going to give you a little bit more health. Mushrooms are technically better overall because they're going to give you a total of 30 between 15 health and 15 stamina. Raspberries are going to give you only 7 health, but a little bit of a boost of 20 stamina for 27 total. And there really isn't going to be any F tier food. There's nothing that's just complete trash that you would never even want to bother gathering it or eating it. And because of these reasons, I would probably put the raspberries in C and the mushrooms in B. I like the balance early game of getting enough health to be able to sustain a few hits from the boars and the things you're going to be coming across in the meadows, the graylings and things like that you're going to be fighting at night. So I would give the 30 points of the mushrooms a slight bump ahead of the 27 points of raspberries. But I do love stamina, so there's nothing wrong with raspberries, especially early game. And usually the first creature you're going to come across, especially if you're heading towards the coast, which is usually a good idea to do early game because you want to be heading over there to get a good collection of flint, which spawns at the coast, typically next to the water. You're going to be coming across all of the necks early game. And the grilled neck tail is going to be giving you 33 total, but it's going to feature mostly health with 25 and then only 8 stamina. So given the fact that you have to collect the necks and cook it, and eat it, I actually think that you should be saving your neck tails that you collect to make minced meat instead a little bit later in the game. Once you come across it, you're going to want a nice stock of 30 or 40 neck tails. Obviously, cook it and eat it if you need it. I'm not going to put it in the F tier, but I do think there's way better options early game with the boar and the deer and the different things you're going to have available that you probably want to prioritize saving these instead of eating them unless you absolutely have to, because they are definitely worse than the other meat options early in the meadows, coming out at only a 33 total, whereas the boar meat and the deer meat are going to be 40 and 47 respectively. And because of that, we're going to be putting the boar meat right here in B. Now, again, boar meat is going to be an amazing source early on. You're going to be able to use that to turn into sausages, which are like an S tier mid-game food source that you'll be using for a very, very long time. So if you haven't gotten yourself set up with a boar farm similar to the necktails, you're probably going to want to have a good stock of boar meat saved up. So I can't quite go in the A or the B because you're going to be better off saving this for better options down the road. You do get things like deer stew, but early game when you're in the meadows, the cooked deer meat is going to be amazing, giving you 47 total compared to something like the grilled necktail, which is going to give you 33. And definitely try to hunt every single deer that you come across because it's going to be a very, very important food source for you early game with the cooked deer meat. And then as you start transitioning into the middle stages of the Black Forest and starting to get ready for the swamp, you're going to be coming across this deer stew. And this is going to be absolutely amazing. It gives you a 60 total. Coming in at 45 health and 15 stamina. But these actual dishes, like the deer stew and the minced meat that you see right here, are going to require the cauldron, which means you're going to need to enter the Bronze Age and start collecting things like tin, because it takes 10 tin to build yourself up the cauldron. And then you're going to be crunching in some ingredients to get these dishes right here, like deer stew and minced meat. These would both be up in the S tier. But the deer stew is definitely better. We can try to rank these as best we can. The deer stew is going to give you that 60 total, whereas the minced meat is going to give you 53, coming in at 40 health and 13 stamina. And now I want to talk about honey. Now, honey is completely amazing. When you first start your journey in Valheim, you're embarking on a new map, a new server. You really, really, really want to put aside time to look for some of those beehives. It's even worth spending a couple days running around that first meadow you spawn in. You can usually find 4 or 5 beehives, especially if you and a friend prioritize spending a day or two running around looking for those abandoned shacks, those buildings that have a beehive resting in the corner. You want to take that down and bring back the queen bee to your base and get honey set up as soon as possible. This is something you can start getting day 1, day 2, and it is an infinite regeneration food source that is really, really amazing for like the first 20 or 30 days of the game. And even after that, it's going to be an awesome ingredient for so many things that you want to be cooking up. But not only all of that, honey gives you 35 stamina. So this is like the best base food early game, something to munch on while you're building, while you're chopping wood, while you're in a peaceful setting, and you just want enough stamina to not get annoyed while you're doing things around your base. Honey is something that is an infinite food source given to you by your beehives, and it gives you an amazing amount of stamina. It comes in at 43 total, 35 stamina, and 8 health. But then let's backtrack a little bit and talk about blueberries. So blueberries are going to be something you start coming across very early when you start clearing into those black forests. But similar to the ingredients down here, you don't really want to be munching on your blueberries because they're going to be a really, really important ingredient for things like deer stew or some of the different meads you're trying to do. Things like minor healing or the tasty mead that you're going to be cooking up in the cauldron. So in my opinion, you don't really want to be eating stuff in the C tier. You want to be ideally saving it up and picking all of those raspberries and blueberries as you come across them. But if you do want to eat your blueberries, you're in a tough spot where you don't have a lot of food. They're really not that bad early game. They come in at 33 total, giving you mostly stamina. They have 25 stamina and 8 health. So they're basically just a better version of the raspberries, because remember the raspberries were 27 total, giving you 20 stamina, prioritized in that regard. And then the blueberries are going to give you 25 stamina instead of 20 with that 33 total. And while we're on the subject of raspberries and blueberries, obviously it makes sense to talk about the Queen's Jam. Now, the Queen's Jam is actually a really good food, especially when you're in the Black Forest. It's going to be great. If you've got a ton of raspberries and blueberries and you've done a really good job of stacking up 50 or 100 of those, you feel like you got plenty of ingredients, Queen's Jam can make a lot of sense, especially for some of your big fights, because it gives you 54 total. So really, really a good option. If you can rummage around and skirt the edges of the Black Forest, get a few blueberries, stock up on your raspberries, great option here for the first boss in Eikthyr to eat some Queen's Jam and get a really good amount of 54 total points, the 14 health, and the 40 stamina. So something that you could do is eat some Queen's Jam, call that your stamina food, then go with a couple health options like deer meat and boar meat, and you'd have a really good food setup for the first boss. But ideally, you do want to be saving up those raspberries and blueberries. So I'm going to put the Queen's Jam down in the B tier. Although it is a really good food, there's better ways to spend your food early game, and you would rather prioritize saving those berries. Then for the yellow mushroom, again, this is something you're definitely going to want a few lying around, because these are going to be part of the stamina meads a little bit later on, and they are definitely handy, especially in some of those big fights. You don't want to run out of stamina and then basically just auto die, not being able to do anything. And then the yellow mushrooms are, even by themselves, going to be a pretty solid source. They have 40 total, giving you 10 health and 30 stamina. So when you're clearing out those dungeons in the Black Forest, the burial chambers, you do want to definitely scoop up these glowing yellow mushrooms, because they are a very solid source of food, and you're going to want them for the stamina meads a little bit later. They could be a great base food because they prioritize stamina. So we will slide this over here. Then let's talk about carrots. So carrots, you're going to be able to find the seeds in the Black Forest. And when you find them, you definitely want to scoop them up. And you definitely want to get them cycling through by planting them in your base and in your home as soon as possible, because you are going to want a ton of carrots on your data. And carrots in their own right can make a very good base food because they clock in at 42 total, giving you 10 health and 32 stamina. So they're pretty similar to honey. Honey's got a little bit more stamina at 35, but a little bit less health at 8. So carrot's going to be very similar, and they are basically an infinite food source. So when you're at home, if you've got a proper beehive farm and a proper carrot farm, these are two really good options for you to just eat while you're in your base and stack up a bunch of stamina when you're not really in a combat scenario. So I'm actually going to put the carrots up here in the S tier because they are an infinitely renewable, really good source of stamina for you. Plus, you are going to want a ton of these for taming boars and being able to just throw them in your boar pen, stack up a bunch of boar meat, ideally to be able to get a bunch of sausages later on when you're voyaging into the swamp. And that leads us into talking about carrot soup, which again is a complete S tier food. This stuff is absolutely amazing. Now, this isn't going to be infinite like the carrots because you do need mushrooms. It's only a 3-to-1 ratio. You need 1 mushroom for every 3 carrot, but carrot soup is going to be an incredible food source that is an extremely popular one when people are venturing into the Black Forest and even into the swamp. A lot of people are eating carrot soup for a very long time because it gives you 60 total, prioritizing stamina with 45 and 15 health. So it is extremely complementary to deer stew. A really good 1-2 punch is going with the deer stew and then the carrot soup because they are both just opposites of each other. You've got the 60 total for both, whereas the deer stew gives you 45 health and 15 stamina. And then the opposite is true for carrot soup. It gives you 15 health and 45 stamina. So once you've got your cauldron, really think about doing this 1-2 punch of deer stew and carrot soup. That will give you a great base to build off of, and then just flex with whatever third option you've got for food based on the situation that you're in, prioritizing stamina for doing things around your base, chopping wood, or embarking out to clear a burial chamber or do a big boss fight where you would want more health. And then lastly, we've got boar jerky. Now, boar jerky is very good, especially if you're playing through your data in a way where you've got, actually, let me crop this in here because we switched that. There we go. That's a little bit better now that we've got everything on the board and I can kind of talk about things and mix and match. But yeah, boar meat, similar to some of the other options like honey and carrot, it actually can be technically an infinite food source because what it takes is boar meat and honey. So if you've got yourself a boar farm and you've got some beehives around your base, you can technically use the boar jerky as an infinite food source to just eat as much as you want. And on top of that, it's a very balanced and flexible food because it gives you the 46 total and it's perfectly split between health and stamina at 23 apiece. So in conclusion here, if you were going to ask just my overall sentiment of what I would recommend as like a one option to fit all situations, I would probably go with deer stew, carrot soup, and then boar jerky. And that is going to be a great foundation that would give you a good blend of both health and stamina to be universally good in basically any situation. Because it gives you the one food source that really prioritizes health, the one food source that really prioritizes stamina, and then one of the best balanced options early game in the boar jerky that gives you a total of 46, perfectly split. And that is our early game Valheim food tier list. Remember to subscribe on your way out if you enjoy Valheim content. I've got a lot of future videos planned, like diving into the next step of this tier list, which would be the mid-game food tier list as you're venturing into the swamp and the mountain and some of those other biomes. So appreciate you. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.